Hey, welcome back if you're returning. We're still reading A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, The Hedge Knight by George R. R. Martin. I think we're up to part 4 now, and we're on to the first day of the tourney. So let's continue. The first day of the tourney dawned bright and clear. Dunk bought a sack full of foodstuffs, so they were able to break their fast on goose eggs, fried bread, and bacon. But when the food was cooked, he found he had no appetite. His belly felt hard as a rock, even though he knew he would not ride today. The right of first challenge will go to knights of higher birth and greater renown, to lords and their sons and champions from other tourneys. Egg chattered all through their breakfast, talking of this man and that man, and how they might fare. He was not japing me when he said he knew every good knight in the Seven Kingdoms, Dunk thought ruefully. He found it humbling to listen so intently to the words of a scrawny orphan boy, but Egg's knowledge might serve him should he face one of these men in a tilt. The meadow was a churning mass of people, all trying to elbow their way closer for a better view. Dunk was as good an elbower as any, and bigger than most. He squirmed forward to rise 6 yards from the fence. When Egg complained that all he could see were arses, Dunk sat the boy on his shoulders. Across the field, the viewing stand was filling up with high-born lords and ladies, a few rich townfolk, and a score of knights who had decided not to compete today. Of Prince Macar he saw no sign, but he recognised Prince Baelor at Lord Ashford's side. Sunlight flashed golden off the shoulder clasp that held his cloak and the slim coronet about his temples, but otherwise he dressed far more simply than most of the other lords. He does not look a Targaryen in truth, with that dark hair. Dunk said as much to Egg. It's said he favours his mother, the boy reminded him. She was a Dornish princess. The 5 champions had raised their pavilions at the north end of the lists with the river behind them. The smallest 2 were orange, and the shields hung outside their doors displayed the white sun and chevron. Those would be Lord Ashford's sons, Andro and Robert, brothers to the fair maid. Dunk had never heard other knights speak of their prowess, which meant they would likely be the first to fall. Besides the orange pavilion stood one of deep-dyed green, much larger. The golden rose of Highgarden flapped above it, and the same device was emblazoned on the great green shield outside the door. "That's Leo Tyrell, Lord of Highgarden," said Egg. "I knew that," Dunk said, irritated. "The old man and I served at Highgarden before you were ever born." He could hardly remember that year himself, but Sir Arlen had often spoke of Leo Longthorn, as he was sometimes called, a peerless jouster, for all the silver in his hair. "That must be Lord Leo beside the tent, the slender greybeard in green and gold." "Yes," said Egg. "I saw him at King's Landing once. He's not one you'll want to challenge, sir." "Boy, I do not require your counsel on who to challenge." The 4th pavilion was sewn together from diamond-shaped pieces of cloth, alternating red and white. Dunk did not know the colours, but Egg said they belonged to a knight from the Vale of Arion, named Sir Humphrey Harding. "He won a great melee at Maidenpool last year, sir, and overthrew Sir Donal of Duskendale and the Lords Arion and Royce in the lists." The last pavilion was Prince Valar's. Of black silk it was, with a line of pointed scarlet pennons hanging from its roof, like long red flames. The shield on its stand was glossy black, emblazoned with the 3-headed dragon of House Targaryen. One of the Kingsguard knights stood beside it, his shining white armour stark against the black of the tent's cloth. Seeing him there, Dunk wondered whether any of the challengers would dare to touch the dragon's shield. Valar was the king's grandson, after all, and son to Baelor Breakspear. He need not have worried. When the horns blew to summon the challengers, all 5 of the mage champions were called forth to defend her. Dunk could hear a murmur of excitement in the crowd as the challengers appeared one by one at the south end of the lists. Heralds boomed the names of each knight in turn. They paused before the viewing stand to dip their lances in salute to Lord Ashford, Prince Baelor, and the Fair Maid, then circled to the north end of the field to select their opponents. The Grey Lion of Casterly Rock struck the shield of Lord Tyrell, while his golden-haired heir, Sir Tybalt Lannister, challenged Lord Ashford's eldest son. Lord Tully of Riverrun tapped the diamond-painted shield of Sir Humphrey Harding. Sir Abelard Hightower knocked upon Valar's, and the younger Ashford was called out by Sir Lionel Baratheon, the knight they called the Laughing Storm. The challengers trotted back to the south end of the lists to await their foes. Sir Abelard in silver and smoke colours, a stone watchtower on his shield, crowned with fire. The two Lannisters, all crimson, bearing the golden lion of Casterly Rock. The Laughing Storm, shining in cloth of gold, with a black stag on his breast and shield and a rack of iron antlers on his helm. Lord Tully, wearing a striped blue and red cloak, clasped with a silver trout at each shoulder. Clasped with a silver trout at each shoulder. Clasped with a silver trout at each shoulder. They pointed their 12-foot lances skyward, the gusty wind snapping and tugging at the pennons. At the north end of the field, squires held brightly barded destriers for the champions to mount. They donned their helms and took up lance and shield, in splendour the equal of their foes. The Ashfords billowing orange silks, Sir Humphrey's red and white diamonds, Lord Leo on his white charger with green satin trappings patterned with golden roses, and of course, Valar Targaryen. The young prince's horse was black as night, to match the colours of his armour, lance, shield, and trappings. Atop his helm was a gleaming three-headed dragon, wings spread, enamelled in a rich red. Its twin was painted on the glossy black surface of his shield. Each of the defenders had a wisp of orange silk knotted about an arm, favours bestowed by the Fair Maid. As the champions trotted into position, Ashford Meadow grew almost still. Then a horn sounded, and stillness turned to tumult in half a heartbeat. 10 pairs of gilded spurs drove into the flanks of 10 great war horses. 1,000 voices began to scream and shout. 40 iron-shod hooves pounded and tore the grass. 10 lances dipped and steadied. The field seemed to almost shake, and champions and challengers came together in a rending crash of wood and steel. In an instant, the riders were beyond each other, wheeling about for another pass. Lord Tully reeled in his saddle, but managed to keep his seat. When the commons realised that all 10 of the lances had broken, a great roar of approval went up. It was a splendid omen for the success of the tourney, and a testament to the skill of the competitors. Squires handed fresh lances to the jousters to replace the broken ones they cast aside, and once more the spurs dug deep. Dunk could feel the earth trembling beneath the soles of his feet. Atop his shoulders, Egg shouted happily and waved his pipe-stem arms. The young prince passed nearest to them. Dunk saw the point of his black lance kiss the watchtower on his foe's shield and slide off to slam into his chest, even as Sir Abelard's own lance burst into splinters against Valar's breastplate. The grey stallion in the silver and smoke trappings reared with the force of the impact, and Sir Abelard Hightower was lifted from his stirrups and dashed violently to the ground. Lord Tully was down as well, unhorsed by Sir Humphrey Harding, but he sprang up at once and drew his long sword, and Sir Humphrey cast aside his lance, unbroken, and dismounted to continue their fight afoot. Sir Abelard was not so sprightly. His squire ran out, loosened his helm, and called for help, and 2 serving men lifted the dazed knight by the arms to help him back to his pavilion. Elsewhere on the field, the 6 knights who had remained ahorse were riding their 3rd course. More lances shattered, and this time Lord Leo Tyrell aimed his point so expertly he ripped the grey lion's helm cleanly off his head. Barefaced, the Lord of Casterly Rock raised his hand in salute and dismounted, yielding the match. By then, Sir Humphrey had beaten Lord Tully into surrender, showing himself as skilled with a sword as he was with a lance. Tybalt Lannister and Andrew Ashford rode against each other thrice more before Sir Andrew finally lost his shield, seat, and match all at once. The younger Ashford lasted even longer, breaking no less than 9 lances against Sir Lionel Baratheon, the Laughing Storm. Champion and challenger both lost their saddles on the 10th course, only to rise together to fight on, sword against mace. Finally, a battered Sir Robert Ashford admitted defeat, but on the viewing stand his father looked anything but dejected. Both Lord Ashford's sons had been ushered from the ranks of the champions, it was true, but they had acquitted themselves nobly against 2 of the finest knights in the 7 kingdoms. "I must do even better," Dunk thought as he watched victor and vanquished embrace and walk together from the field. "It is not enough for me to fight well and lose. I must win at least the first challenge, or I lose all." Sir Tybalt Lannister and the Laughing Storm would now take their places amongst the champions, replacing the men they had defeated. Already the orange pavilions were coming down. A few feet away, the young prince sat at ease in a raised camp chair before his great black tent. His helm was off. He had dark hair like his father, but a bright streak ran through it. A serving man brought him a silver goblet, and he took a sip. Water, if he is wise, Dunk thought. Wine, if not. He found himself wondering if Valor had indeed inherited a measure of his father's prowess, or whether it had only been that he had drawn the weakest opponent. A fanfare of trumpets announced that 3 new challengers had entered the lists. The heralds shouted their names. "Sir Pierce of House Carron, Lord of the Marches." He had a silver harp emblazoned on his shield, though his surcoat was patterned with nightingales. "Sir Joseph of House Mallister, from Seaguard." Sir Joseph sported a winged helm. On his shield, a silver eagle flew across an indigo sky. "Sir Gawain of House Swan, Lord of Stonehelm on the Cape of Ra." A pair of swans, one black and one white, fought furiously on his arms. Lord Gawain's armour, cloak, and horse bardings were a riot of black and white as well, down to the stripes on his scabbard and lance. Lord Carron, harper and singer and knight of renown, touched the point of his lance to Lord Tyrell's rose. Sir Joseph thumped on Sir Humphrey Harding's diamonds, and the black and white knight, Lord Gawain's swan, challenged the Black Prince with the White Guardian. Dunk rubbed his chin. Lord Gawain was even older than the old man, and the old man was dead. "Egg, who is the least dangerous of these challengers?" he asked the boy on his shoulders, who seemed to know much of these knights. "Lord Gawain," the boy said at once. "Valar's foe." "Prince Valar," he corrected. "A squire must keep a courteous tongue, boy." The 3 challengers took their places as the 3 champions mounted up. Men were making wagers all around them and calling out encouragement to their choices, but Dunk had eyes for only the prince. On the first pass, he struck Lord Gawain's shield with a glancing blow, the blunted point of the lance sliding aside just as it had with Sir Abelard Hightower, only this time it was deflected the other way, into empty air. Lord Gawain's own lance broke clean against the prince's chest, and Valar seemed about to fall for an instant before he recovered his seat. The second time through the lists, Valar swung his lance left, aiming for his foe's breast, but he struck his shoulder instead. Even so, the blow was enough to make the older knight lose his lance. One arm flailed for balance, and Lord Gawain fell. The young prince swung from the saddle and drew his sword, but the fallen man waved him off and raised his visor. "I yield, your grace," he called. "Well fought." The lords in the viewing stands echoed him, shouting, "Well fought, well fought," as Valar knelt to help the grey-haired lord to his feet. "It was not either," Egg complained. "Be quiet, or you can go back to camp." Farther away, Sir Joseph Mallister was being carried off the field unconscious, while the Harp Lord and the Rose Lord were going at each other lustily with blunted long axes, to the delight of the roaring crowd. Dunk was so intent on Valar Targaryen that he scarcely saw them. He is a fair knight, but no more than that, he found himself thinking. I would have a chance against him. If the gods were good, I might even unhorse him, and once afoot, my weight and strength would tell. Get him! Egg shouted merrily, shifting his seat on Junk's shoulders in excitement. Get him! Hit him! Yes! He's right there! He's right there! It seemed to be Lord Karen he was cheering on. The harper was playing a different sort of music now, driving Lord Leo back and back as steel sang on steel. The crowd seemed almost equally divided between them, so cheers and curses mingled freely in the morning air. Chips of wood and paint were flying from Lord Leo's shield as Lord Pierce's axe knocked the petals off his golden rose, one by one, until the shield finally shattered and split. But as it did, the axe head hung up for an instant in the wood, and Lord Leo's own axe crashed down upon the haft of his foe's weapon, breaking it off not a foot from his hand. He cast aside the broken shield, and suddenly he was the one on the attack. Within moments, the harper knight was on one knee, singing his surrender. For the rest of the morning, and well into the afternoon, it was more of the same, as challengers took to the field, in twos and threes, and sometimes five together. Trumpets blew, the heralds called out names, war horses charged, the crowd cheered, lances snapped like twigs, and swords rang against helms and mail. It was, small folk and high lord alike agree, a splendid day for jousting. Sir Humphrey Harding and Sir Humphrey Beesbury, a bold young knight in yellow and black stripes with 3 beehives on his shield, splintered in no less than a dozen lances apiece, in an epic struggle the small folk soon began to call the Battle of Humphrey. Sir Tybalt Lannister was unhorsed by Sir John Penrose and broke his sword in the fall, but fought back with shield alone to win the bout and remain a champion. One-eyed Sir Robin Riesling, a grizzled old knight with a salt and pepper beard, lost his helm to Lord Leo's lance in their first course, yet refused to yield. 3 times more they rose at each other, the wind whipping Sir Robin's hair while the shards of broken lances flew around his bare face like wooden knives, which Dunk thought all the more wondrous when Egg told him that Sir Robin had lost his eye to a splinter from a broken lance not 5 years earlier. Leo Tyrell was too chivalrous to aim another lance at Sir Robin's unprotected head, but even so, Riesling's stubborn courage, or was it folly, left Dunk astounded. Finally, the Lord of Highgarden struck Sir Robin's breastplate, a solid thump right over the heart, and sent him cartwheeling to the earth. Sir Lionel Baratheon also fought several notable matches against lesser foes. He would often break into a booming laughter at the moment they touched his shield, and laugh all the time he was mounting and charging and knocking them from their stirrups. If his challengers wore any sort of crest on their helm, Sir Lionel would strike it off and fling it into the crowd. The crests were ornate things, made of carved wood or shaped leather, and sometimes gilded and enamelled, or even wrought in pure silver, so the men he beat did not appreciate this habit, though it made him a great favourite of the commons. Before long, only crestless men were choosing him. As loud and often as Sir Lionel laughed down a challenger, though, Dunk thought the day's honours should go to Sir Humphrey Harding, who humbled 14 knights, each one of them formidable. Meanwhile, the young prince sat outside his black pavilion, drinking from his silver goblet, and rising from time to time to mount his horse and vanquish yet another undistinguished foe. He had won 9 victories, but it seemed to Dunk that everyone was hollow. He is beating old men and up-jumped squires, a few lords of high birth and low skill. The truly dangerous men are riding past his shield as if they do not see it. Late in the day, a brazen fanfare announced the entry of a new challenger to the lists. He rode in on a great red charger, whose black bardings were slashed to reveal glimpses of yellow, crimson, and orange beneath. As he approached the viewing stand to make his salute, Dunk saw the face beneath the raised visor, and recognised the prince he'd met in Lord Ashford's stables. Egg's legs tightened around his neck. "Stop that," Dunk snapped, yanking them apart. "Do you mean to choke me?" "Prince Arion Brightflame," a herald called, "of the Red Keep of King's Landing, son of Maekar, Prince of Summerhall of House Targaryen, grandson to Daeron the Good, the second of his name, King of the Andals, the Rhoynar, and the First Men, and Lord of the Seven Kingdoms." Arion bore a three-headed dragon on his shield, but it was rendered in colours much more vivid than Valar's. One head was orange, one yellow, one red, but the flames they breathed had a sheen of gold leaf. His surcoat was a swirl of smoke and fire woven together, and his blackened helm was surmounted by a crest of red enamel flames. After a pause to dip his lance to Prince Baelor, a pause so brief that it was almost perfunctory, he galloped to the north end of the field, past Lord Leo's pavilion and the Laughing Storms, slowing only when he approached Prince Valar's tent. The young prince rose and stood stiffly beside his tent, and for a moment Dunk was certain that Arion meant to strike it. But then he laughed and trotted past, and banged his point hard against Sir Humphrey Harding's diamonds. Come out, little knight," he sang in a loud, clear voice. "It's time you faced the dragon." Sir Humphrey inclined his head stiffly to his bow as his destrier was brought out, and then ignored him while he mounted, fastened his helm, and took up lance and shield. The spectators grew quiet as the two knights took their places. Dunk heard the clang of Prince Arion dropping his visor. The horn blew. Sir Humphrey broke slowly, building speed, but his foe raked the red charger with both spurs, coming hard. Egg's legs tightened again. "Kill him!" he shouted suddenly. "Kill him! He's right there! Kill him! Kill him! Kill him!" Dunk was not certain of which of the knights he was shouting to. Prince Arion's lance, gold-tipped and painted in stripes of red, orange, and yellow, swung down across the barrier. Low, too low, thought Dunk the moment he saw it. He'll miss the rider and strike Sir Humphrey's horse. He needs to bring it up. Then, with dawning horror, he began to suspect that Arion intended no such thing. He cannot mean to. At the last possible instant, Sir Humphrey's stallion reared away from the oncoming point, eyes rolling in terror. But too late. Arion's lance took the animal just above the armour that protected his breastbone and exploded out the back of his neck in a gout of bright red blood. Screaming, the horse crashed sideways, knocking the wooden barrier to pieces as he fell. Sir Humphrey tried to leap free, but a foot caught in a stirrup, and they heard his shriek as his leg was crushed between the splintered fence and the falling horse. All of Ashford Meadow was shouting. Men ran onto the field to extricate Sir Humphrey, but the stallion, dying in agony, kicked at them as they approached. Arion, having raced blithely around the carnage to the end of the lists, wheeled his horse and came galloping back. He was shouting too, though Dunk could not make out the words over the almost human screams of the dying horse. Vaulting from his saddle, Arion drew his sword and advanced on his fallen foe. His own squires and one of Sir Humphrey's had to pull him back. Egg squirmed on Dunk's shoulders. "Let me down," the boy said. "The poor horse! Let me down!" Dunk felt sick himself. What would I do if such a fate befell Thunder? A man-at-arms with a poleaxe dispatched Sir Humphrey's stallion, ending the hideous screams. Dunk turned and forced his way through the press. When he came to open ground, he lifted Egg off his shoulders. The boy's hood had fallen back, and his eyes were red. "A terrible sight, he told the lad. "But a squire must needs be strong. You'll see worse mishaps at the other tourneys, I fear." "It was no mishap," Egg said, mouth trembling. "Arion meant to do it. You saw." Dunk frowned. It had looked that way to him as well, but it was hard to accept that any knight could be so unchivalrous, least of all one who was blood of the dragon. I saw a knight, green as summer grounds, lose control of his lance, he said stubbornly, and I'll hear no more of it. The jousting is done for the day, I think. Come, lad. He was right about the end of the day's contests. By the time the chaos had been set to rights, the sun was low in the west, and Lord Ashford had called a halt. As the shadow of the evening crept across the meadow, 100 torches were lit amongst the merchants' row. Dunk bought a horn a bell for himself and half a horn for the boy to cheer him up. They wandered for a time, listening to a sprightly air on pipes and drums and watching a puppet show about Nymeria, the warrior queen with 10,000 ships. The puppeters only had 2 ships, but managed a rousing sea battle all the same. Dunk wanted to ask the girl Tanzel if she had finished painting his shield, but he could see that she was busy. I'll wait until she is done for the night, he resolved. Perhaps she'll have a thirst then. Sir Duncan, a voice called behind him, and then again, Sir Duncan. Suddenly, Dunk remembered that was him. I saw you among the small folk today, with this boy on your shoulders, said Raymond Fossaway as he came up smiling. Indeed, the 2 of you were hard to miss. The boy is my squire, Egg. This is Raymond Fossaway. Dunk had to pull the boy forward, and even then Egg lowered his head and stared at Raymond's boots as he mumbled a greeting. Well met, lad, Raymond said easily. Sir Duncan, why not watch from the viewing gallery? All knights are welcome there. Dunk was at ease among the small folk and servants. The idea of claiming a place among the lords, ladies, and landed knights made him uncomfortable. I would not have wanted any closer view of that last tilt. Raymond grimaced. Nor I. Lord Ashford declared Sir Humphrey the victor and awarded him Prince Arion's courser, but even so, he will not be able to continue. His leg was broken in 2 places. Prince Baelor sent his own maester to tend him. Will there be another champion in Sir Humphrey's place? Lord Ashford has a mind to grant the place to Lord Caron, or perhaps the other Sir Humphrey, the one who gave Harding such a splendid match. But Prince Baelor told him that it would not be seemly to remove Sir Humphrey's shield and pavilion under the circumstances. I believe they will continue with 4 champions in place of 5. 4 champions, Dunk thought. Leo Tyrell, Lionel Baratheon, Tybalt Lannister, and Prince Baelor. He had seen enough of this first day to know how little chance he would stand against the first 3, which left only... A Hedge Knight cannot challenge a prince. Valar is second in line to the Iron Throne. He is Baelor Breakspear's son, and his blood is blood of Aegon the Conqueror and the Young Dragon and Prince Aemon the Dragon Knight. And I am some boy the old man found behind a pot shop in Flea Bottom. His head hurt just thinking about it. Who does your cousin mean to challenge? He asked Raymond. Sir Tybalt. All things being equal, they are well matched. My cousin keeps a sharp watch on every tilt, though. Should any man be wounded on the morrow, or show signs of exhaustion or weakness, Stefan will be quick to knock on his shield. You may count on it. No one has ever accused him of being an excess of chivalry. He laughed, as if to take the sting from his words. Sir Duncan, will you join me for a cup of wine? I have a matter I must attend to, said Dunk, uncomfortable with the notion of accepting hospitality he could not return. I could wait here and bring your shield when the puppet show is over, sir, said Egg. They're going to do Simeon's Star Eyes later, and make the dragons fight again as well. There, you see? Your matter is attended to, and the wine awaits, said Raymond. It's an Arbor vintage, too. How can you refuse me? Bereft of excuses, Dunk had no choice but to follow, leaving Egg at the puppet show. The apple of House Fossaway flew above the golden-coloured pavilion where Raymond attended his cousin. Behind it, 2 servants were basting a goat with honey and herbs all over a small cook fire. Behind it, 2 servants were basting a goat with honey and herbs over a small cook fire. There's food as well if you're hungry, Raymond said, negligently, as he held the flap for Dunk. A brazier of coals lit the interior and made the air pleasantly warm. Raymond filled 2 cups with wine. They say Arion is in a rage at Lord Ashford for awarding his charger to Sir Humphrey, he commented as he poured. But I'll wager it was his uncle who counselled it. He handed Dunk a wine cup. Prince Baelor is an honourable man. As the bright prince is not, Raymond laughed. Don't look so anxious, Sir Duncan. There is none here but us. It is no secret that Arion is a bad piece of work. Thank the gods that he is well down in the order of succession. You truly believe he meant to kill the wards? Is there any doubt of it? If Prince Macar had been there, it would have gone differently, I promise you. Arion is all smiles and chivalry, so long as his father is watching, if the tales be true. But when he's not... I saw that Prince Macar's chair was empty. He's left Ashford to search for his sons, along with Roland Crakehall of the King's Guard. There's a wild tale of robber knights going about, but I'll wager the prince is just off drunk again. The wine was fine and fruity, as good a cup as he had ever tasted. He rolled it in his mouth, swallowed, and said, Which prince is this now? Macar's heir. Daron, he's named, after the king. They call him Daron the Drunken, though, not in his father's hearing. The youngest boy was with him as well. They left Summerhall together, but never reached Ashford. Raymond drained his cup and set it aside. Poor Macar. Poor, said Dunk, startled. The king's son? The king's 4th son, said Raymond. Not quite as bold as Prince Baelor, nor as clever as Prince Ares, nor as gentle as Prince Rhaegal. And now he must suffer seeing his own sons overshadowed by his brothers. Daron is a sot. Arion is vain and cruel. The 3rd son was so unpromising that they gave him to the citadel to make a maester of him. And the youngest, Sir Duncan, Egg burst in panting. His hood had fallen back, and the light from the brazier shone in his big dark eyes. You have to run, he's hurting her. Dunk lurched to his feet, confused. Hurting who? Arion, the boy shouted. He's hurting her! The puppet girl! Hurry! Whirling, he darted back out into the night. Dunk made to follow, but Raymond caught his arm. Sir Duncan, Arion, he said, a prince of the blood. Be careful. It was good counsel, he knew. The old man would have said the same. But he could not listen. He wrenched free of Raymond's hand and shouldered his way out of the pavilion. He could hear shouting off in the direction of the Merchant's Row. Egg was almost out of sight. Dunk ran after him. His legs were long, and the boys were short. He quickly closed the distance. A wall of watchers had gathered around the puppeteers. Dunk shouldered through them, ignoring their curses. A man-at-arms in the royal livery stepped up to block him. Dunk put a big hand on his chest and shoved, sending the man flailing backwards to sprawl on his arse in the dirt. The puppeteer's stool had been knocked on its side. The fat Dornish woman was on the ground weeping. One man-at-arms was dangling the puppets of Florian and Jonquil from his hands as another was setting them afire with a torch. 3 more men were opening chests, spilling more puppets on the ground and stamping on them. The dragon puppet was scattered all about them, a broken wing here, its head there, its tail in 3 pieces. And in the midst of it all stood Prince Arion, resplendent in a red velvet doublet with long dagged sleeves, twisting Tanzel's arms in both hands. She was on her knees, pleading with him. Arion ignored her. He forced open her hand and seized one of her fingers. Dunk stood there stupidly, not quite believing what he saw. Then he heard a crack, and Tanzel screamed. One of Arion's men tried to grab him and went flying. 3 long strides, then Dunk grabbed the prince's shoulder and wrenched him around hard. His sword and dagger were forgotten, along with everything the old man had ever taught him. His fist knocked Arion off his feet, and the toe of his boot slammed into the prince's belly. When Arion went for his knife, Dunk stepped on his wrist and kicked him again, right in the mouth. He might have kicked him to death right there and then, but the princeling's men swarmed over him. He had a man on each arm and another pounding him across the back. No sooner had he wrestled free of one of them, 2 more were on him. Finally, they shoved him down and pinned his arms and legs. Arion was on his feet again. The prince's mouth was bloody. He pushed inside it with his finger. "You've loosened one of my teeth," he complained. "So we'll start by breaking all of yours." He pushed his hair from his eyes. "You look familiar." "You took me for a stable boy." Arion smiled redly. "I recall. You refused to take my horse. Why did you throw your life away? For this?" Tanzel was curled up on the ground, cradling her maimed hand. He gave her a shove with the toe of his boot. "She's scarcely worth it. A traitor. The dragon ought to never lose." "He is mad," thought Dunk. "But he is still a prince's son, and he means to kill me." He might have prayed then, if he had known a prayer all the way through, but there was no time. There was hardly even time to be afraid. "Nothing more to say," said Arion. "You bore me, sir." He poked at his bloody mouth again. "Get a hammer and break all his teeth out, wait," he commanded. "And then let's cut him open and show him the colour of his entrails." "No!" a boy's voice said. "Don't hurt him." God be good. The boy, the brave, foolish boy, Dunk thought. He fought against the arms restraining him, but it was no good. "Hold your tongue, you stupid boy. Run away, they'll hurt you." "No, they won't." Egg moved closer. "If they do, they'll answer to my father, and my uncle as well. Let go of him, I said. Wait, Yorkle, you know me. Do as I say." The hands holding his left arm were gone, then the others. Dunk did not understand what was happening. The men-at-arms were backing away. One even knelt. Then the crowd parted for Raymond Bossuet. He had donned mail and helm, and his hand was on his sword. His cousin, Sir Stefan, was just behind him, had already bared his blade, and with them were 6 men-at-arms, with the red apple badge sewn on their breasts. Prince Arion paid them no mind. "Impudent little wretch," he said to Egg, spitting a mouthful of blood at the boy's feet. "What happened to your hair?" "I cut it off, brother," said Egg. "I didn't want to look like you." Ooh, go Egg, go Egg. He's Targaryen, as if we couldn't guess. So, what do you think of that little bit? Let me know. And if you're not subscribed, subscribe. Like the video if you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheerio.